New motorcycle riders need a bike that is lightweight, inexpensive, forgiving, and easy to ride. And it doesn't hurt if it's versatile. A lot of the conventional advice you'll find about the best first bike will recommend things like a Grom or a Rebel 300. But I feel like the most obvious and best overall choice is often overlooked. This is kind of a remake of a video I made 4 years ago, but that video sucks and I have more insight now, so hopefully it's valuable to reiterate. I started riding on a Honda CB500F. I did a lot of research into what is the best first motorcycle, and that's what I ended up with. And it was a good first bike, but if I had it to do over again, I absolutely would not have bought that bike first. I would have started on a dual sport. And it's important to note that I mean this from the perspective of a brand new motorcycle rider, any new motorcycle rider, not just the ones that are actually interested in riding off-road. So this is 7 reasons why I think a dual sport is the best first motorcycle. It's really like 6.5, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. The first reason why I think a dual sport is the best first motorcycle is they are cheap. Lots of used ones out there for $2,500 or more that are really great. I bought that XT225 for my daughter for $2 grand. That was a fantastic, easy to ride bike that'll last forever. New dual sports are half to a third the cost of many larger new motorcycles. You can buy a Honda XR150L for $3,000 MSRP. My local dealer is selling KLX 230s for $4,000 right now. And the 2 bikes that top my list of dual sport motorcycles for beginners, the CRF 300L and the KLX 300, can be had for $5,400 MSRP for a 300L and $6,200 for a KLX 300. They're not expensive to buy even new, and the used ones are even cheaper. Another advantage of spending less money and starting on a dual sport is it makes more sense to start with something inexpensive when you're new to motorcycling. You don't want to end up upside down in a $10,000, $15,000 bike and then decide 2 months in that you don't really like motorcycling that much. And the other disadvantage there is that you've gotten too much bike to begin with, probably. There's a lot of very nice, lightly used, newer bikes out there of the bigger sizes because people start on a bike that's too big for them and end up selling it because they just decide they don't like motorcycling. And you want to start on something that enables you to get your confidence, get your feet under you before you start moving up to the bigger bikes that are more expensive. The other advantage to starting on a dual sport is that at least around here and in many other places, they're generally pretty easy to sell for around what you paid or slightly less, depending how long you've had it for. The depreciation fall off is slower, I feel like, on a dual sport bike, particularly if you buy a used one. You buy a used 300L or something for $4,500, you're going to be able to sell it for that even a year or 2 later, or close to it, at least enough to like feel like you got your money's worth out of it over time. So that's another advantage to starting on a dual sport. Reason number 2 why I think a dual sport is a great first motorcycle: they are very easy to ride. In general, dual sports are low displacement, easy to ride bikes, with the exception of, say, the 690 701. They're pretty mellow. Even the 650s are like easier to ride because they're not like immediately snappy throttle, take off out from underneath you style power delivery. They're not heavy in general, and they're also not intimidating, particularly the lower displacement bikes. They have good low down power and a small engine size, and they're easy to learn on. Now, when you start on a bike that's easy to ride, you're going to build confidence faster, and building confidence is the most important skill, in my opinion, to being a safer and better rider. Having confidence will help you get through over and around a lot of things that you might have hesitated on, and that will really make you a better rider and increase your riding experience. Now, overconfidence is something else, but it's hard to build overconfidence on a dual sport because they're just not that fast. The riding position on a dual sport is more comfortable. You're upright. It feels more secure with your feet directly underneath you, and you have better visibility in traffic, which is really good for a new rider. You're up higher. You can see the oncoming traffic and everybody around you in a way that you just can't on, say, a cruiser bike or even like a street bike where you're bent over the tank. They're also lightweight and easy to move around the garage. They're narrow, so it's easy to maneuver in and out of parking spaces and things like that, and easy to move them around your garage. The reason number 3 why a dual sport is the best first motorcycle, in my opinion, is that they are very cheap to own in a way that very few other bikes are. Small displacement bikes get good gas mileage. Yes, all motorcycles get good gas mileage, but it's even better when you're riding around on a 300 than it is when you're on a 600 or 1,000. Maintenance is cheap. They have small oil capacity, so you're not buying as much oil. You can afford to buy better oil. The oil filters are cheap, and they're easy to switch. And the other thing that people don't consider often before they buy motorcycles is insurance. I just added that KLX 230 to my insurance, and it is $15 a month to insure. $15. Back when I had a Grom and I added that to my insurance, smaller bike, cost less to buy, it was like $50 or $60. So there are less people getting into accidents on dual sports because more people are riding them in the woods. Your insurance premiums are much lower on a dual sport in my experience. This 300L Rally behind me is a third what it cost me to insure the Tenere 700 and the Transalp 750 behind me. Even the 450L, which is arguably a very dangerous and difficult bike to ride to a new rider, is super cheap insurance-wise. Reason 4 why a dual sport is the best first motorcycle, they're easy to work on. There's not a ton of plastics, a lot of the engine is exposed, and what there is easy to get off. It's often just 3 or 4 bolts to take the whole side panel off, you take the seat off, you can get to anything. Oil changes are easier, with the exception of a skid plate if you add one, but some of them have drain plug holes. Skid plates are easy to put on and take off. They're simple bikes, they only have one cylinder, so they're easy to work on and easy to learn about the bike and about mechanicking. So if you're unsure, and most motorcycle riders who ride less expensive bikes end up doing a lot of their own maintenance, and if you're not sure about that or if that's something that intimidates you, a dual sport is easy to work on compared to just about anything else I've had. So not only are you building confidence riding your bike, but you're also building confidence working on your bike, and both of those things transfer to larger bikes later on if that's what you decide you want to do. 5th reason why a dual sport is the best first motorcycle, you don't care if you drop it. My CB500F, I rode around for 6 months, no problems, but one day I came to a stop at a stop sign. I was wearing jeans, that's my first mistake. My jeans got caught on the foot peg, I couldn't get my foot down and I dropped it, smashed the lever off the bike, messed up the end of the handlebar, and it was like super embarrassed, and it was hard to pick up because it's a heavier bike. On a dual sport, that's what they're for. They're designed to be dropped. Scratches are just like additional decoration on a bike like this, and if you do drop it, one, pretty much 90% of the time when that bike goes down, the first thing that hits the ground is the handguard and nothing else hits. So if you add handguards, you're going to protect your bike from just about everything, particularly if you're not doing crazy off-road on a lot of uneven ground. And handguards are cheap to replace, and even like the new Tusk ones I have replaceable pucks on the end for when you drop them every time. But even if you do end up having to replace a plastic, I just did a new rear fender, the under part on this 300L, $9 from the factory. The plastics are way cheaper than body panels on street bikes and the like. Dual sports are easier to pick up, they're lightweight in general, and dings and dents and stuff just don't show up on plastics like they do on fancy body panels on street bikes. You also care less if you paid less for the bike. It's one thing to drop the $2,500 XT225 that you bought on Craigslist. It's another to drop the brand new Ninja 400 that you bought at the dealership. It's different when the bike is cheaper and made for it. If there's a time when you're most likely to drop your motorcycle, it's when you're a new rider, and you can alleviate some of that butt puckering with a dual sport. Number 6 reason why a dual sport is the best first motorcycle, in my opinion, is versatility. When I was a new rider, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I bought a street bike because I thought I wanted to ride on the street, and it didn't take me long to figure out that I actually wanted to go up every gravel road that I saw on the side of the road as I was riding around. The advantage of a dual sport is right there in the name. It's a dual sport. It does both. You can ride it on the street. You can do just about anything you can do on a street bike, albeit less comfortably and with less wind protection, but 80% is good, particularly if you're looking at a 300 or something that's got also decent highway speed capability. You can also, if you see a gravel road or you need to cut across a parking lot or, I don't know, hop off a curb or whatever, you can do that on a dual sport. And if you decide you want to peek into the woods and see what riding gravel roads is like, you'll be on a bike that's good for it instead of a street bike that you're either taking places it shouldn't be or you're just afraid to even try. New riders don't know everything there is to know about riding. They don't know all the different types of riding, and if you want to sample the serial variety pack of motorcycling, the dual sport is the best way to do that. Capable of taking you anywhere you want to go. I call them the ultimate discovery machine because you can discover things like types of riding you didn't even know that you wanted to do. And you just can't do that, or it can't do it as much or as well on a street bike. Now, obviously I'm biased here as a primarily off-road rider, but it just makes sense to start on a bike that lets you experience the most things as safely as possible. And the number 7 reason why a dual sport is the best first motorcycle is actually an answer to the complaint or the disagreement I can already hear formulating, and that is, but they're so tall, they're too tall for new riders. I thought the same thing when I started riding. It's why I overlooked them in the first place. But I have 2 responses to that. One, not all of them. TW200, KLX230S, XT225, XT250, XR150L. There are a ton of lower seat height dual sport bikes out there that are also cheap and inexpensive and easy to to ride. And two, the thing that people don't think about is sag. I was afraid to ride a 250L when I first started because it was too tall. On paper, the seat height is way taller than my 30-inch inseam. But the reality is once you sit on the bike, the seat squishes down, particularly on those cheaper dual sports with less stiff suspensions, and your feet are firmly on the ground. So I'm not saying go out and buy a bike that feels weird to you and is too tall for you once you sit on it. I'm saying sit on it first and then decide, because you might be pleasantly surprised at what you can ride. There's a reason why the Team Oregon classes, why the MSR classes, the beginner intro classes use TW200s. And it's kind of for all the things that I just said. They're cheap, easy to maintain, they're durable, they can be dropped a bunch of times, but also they're easy to ride. The seat height is low and it's unintimidating. Those classes are for people who have never even swung their leg over a motorcycle and they toss them the keys to a TW200. If it's good enough for Team Oregon and the MSR, it's good enough for you, and I would urge you, if you're out there looking for new motorcycles, if you're looking for your first bike, to consider a dual sport alongside the other bikes you might be looking at. So what do you think? What's the best first motorcycle for a new rider in your opinion? What bike did you start on? Let us know in the comments. If you're interested in dual sport and adventure bike tips, tricks, advice, reviews, motorcycle camping stuff, motorcycle camping advice, please consider subscribing to the channel, because I'm the dork on the road and I want to be your internet riding buddy, and I'm better than your regular riding buddies because I come with a mute button. Thank you for watching, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.